By now, I'm sure everyone has heard of the Terminator. The cyborg assassin was brought to life by the Austrian oak himself, Arnold Schwarzenegger. As of this writing, there have been 6 feature-length movie offerings for this franchise. The Terminator in 1984, Terminator 2 Judgment Day in 1991, Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines in 2003, Terminator Salvation in 2009, Terminator Genisys in 2015, and Terminator Dark Fate in 2019. In addition to the movies, supplemental media was released in the form of a TV series and 2 online miniseries. Terminator: The Sarah Connor Chronicles ran from 2008 to 2009, airing a total of 31 episodes. Online, we were given Terminator Salvation, the Machinima series in 2009, and Terminator Genisys, the YouTube Chronicles in 2015. Throughout the various movies and other media in this franchise, one thing was always made clear: the importance of John Connor. Until Dark Fate scuttled that ship. This John Connor would be a military genius and matchless leader. He would, as commander of the human resistance, win the war against the machines. He is a messiah figure. He comes from obscurity and does the impossible to save humanity. His miraculous conception is a paradox. He initiates his own creation because he sent his father from the future into the past. But how did this story really begin, and where is it going? Today on Canon Fodder, we'll analyze the movies and secondary on-screen media in order to plot the origin sequel for the Terminator. Let's begin. For the record, Kyle Reese learns about Sarah from John Connor. He tells Kyle about his mother and gives him a picture of her. Kyle is sent back in time to protect Sarah from termination. While on the run, Kyle and Sarah have sex, and she becomes pregnant with John. Let's consider, if John is so important to winning the war, why doesn't he go back in time? If Kyle fails, then John isn't born. If John goes back in time, even if Sarah dies, John will still survive. But since John knows that Kyle Reese is his dad, or at least during this go-around he is, more on that later, he sends him knowing he'll be successful, because this has all happened before. Effect preceding cause, or retrocausality, makes what happens in the movie possible. While this theory is allowed by the laws of physics, so are white holes, and no one has seen one of those either, so there's that. Since time travel doesn't exist in real life, any theory of causality is up for grabs. Movies like Back to the Future suggest that the grandfather paradox is true, that if a person travels to a time before their grandfather had children and kills him, it would make their own birth impossible. However, logically this doesn't track. All that would happen is that for you as the traveler, your timeline would stop at the point you left and resume in your new continuity. Any new continuity you joined would become your new present and potential future. Nothing you do in your new present can affect your previous present or future. If Terminator insists on an inevitable loop, then why send Kyle back at all? If John will always be born, then Terminator can't change the past. I'll go further and say that even if all 3 Sarah Connors were killed in 1984, then a new John Connor would be born to a different set of parents. As a side note, time travel in movies is always problematic, especially if the characters can travel forward and backward, because with each jump, they are emerging into a tangent reality. Logically, you can't have time travel with the possibility of changing things unless there is a multiverse. A logic problem enters the narrative with Terminator 3. The movie insists that Judgment Day is inevitable. In Terminator 1, saving Sarah wins the war in the future, basically protecting a known timeline and not really changing anything or stopping Judgment Day. Terminator 2 suggests that it might be possible to stop Judgment Day, while the third movie says it's inevitable, and 4, 5, and 6 have their own version of Judgment Day as well. I believe the importance of Terminator 2 and the possibility of stopping Judgment Day was the most important narrative element that should have been set in stone. If stopping the machines is always possible, then finding sequel threads to pull remains viable. If the machines can never be stopped, then why have a movie? Every exercise is just a waste of time. It breaks the premise of the first film. From T3 onward, Judgment Day is always going to happen. I'll tie this back in later. Getting back to John Connor, I suggest that John Connor as a symbol is more important than he is as a person. In fact, all the major players are more caricatures than characters. Think about it. Every movie has a different John Connor. Even Sarah and Kyle have been played by other performers. Is there an in-universe explanation for this? Sure there is. That's why you're here. Only one character remains unchanged in the franchise, and that is the Arnold Terminator. While some fans dislike Dark Fate and accuse it of being woke trash, which is sorta true, we are provided with some of the strongest evidence for what I will prove is the origin of the Terminator. Terminator 1 and 2 told us that Skynet was a physical hardware system. Terminator 3 and onward told us that Skynet, Genesis, and Legion exist as software. So why are we seeing these changes? As most movies do, they try and personify our fears into a physical manifestation. Terminators represent robots and AI gone violently rogue. Judgment Day is our fear of nuclear apocalypse. Skynet is the fear of losing control of our infrastructure, automation phasing out people, and even Big Brother always watching. The changing nature of Skynet from only hardware to include software also just mirrors our own current pace of advancement. In universe, though, the cause and effect of the characters' actions seem to inspire creativity in the machines. At the outset, this makes sense. But it also suggests that the characters going after Skynet directly is the wrong thing to do. I promise I'll gather all these strings together in the end. The last thing to consider is the T-800. Each Terminator is a learning machine. In Terminator 2, Terminator 3, Genesis, and Dark Fate, we are shown a T-800 that can evolve past his machine programming and develop a facsimile of compassion. This is a unique feature of the T-800 that we never see duplicated in any other movie Terminator. The Sarah Connor Chronicles gave us a T-900, played by Summer Glau, that did display emotions to a certain extent, but we didn't get to see a range of T-900s, so the Cameron model might be unique. Dark Fate gave us the clearest nod of a third party being involved in the shaping of events of the characters acting through a T-800. Many fans have pointed out that Carl could not have known when and where these new Terminators would appear. He comes from a future that no longer exists. He came from a future with a living adult, John Connor. But with the success of his mission, the future is changed. So Carl can't reference his own historical database to have these coordinates and provide them to Sarah. So how is she getting them, and from who? With so many alterations to the timeline, it is unlikely that these events are coming into being by chance. Canon Fodder does not discriminate against any franchise entry, or hold that retcons erase film entries. We take the body of work as presented and analyze it to uncover the hidden framework to which the on-screen stories attach. As a brief aside, I find the name Carl to be conspicuous. The fan wiki suggests the name Carl is possibly derived from Carl Hauser, the main protagonist villain and alter ego of Dennis Quaid, played by Arnold Schwarzenegger in the 1990 film Total Recall. I like to think that it refers to Carl Jung, who is famous for his theory of the collective unconscious. The collective unconscious was introduced to represent a form of the unconscious common to mankind as a whole, and originating in the inherited structure of the brain. It is distinct from personal unconscious, which arises from the experience of the individual. According to Jung, the collective unconscious contains archetypes or universal primordial images and ideas. The T-800 is archetypally dynamic in that the character has embodied the most common character archetypes, which are hero, opponent, mentor, and, loosely, love interest. While Carl states his relationship with his wife is platonic, he is still presented as a husband. The most evidence for the origin of the Terminator is found in the nature of Carl. Carl grew to feel remorse over killing John, which had nothing to do with reprogramming, but resulted from his adaptive programming. The prior movies implied that morality was something that had to be taught to the Terminator, usually after being captured and reprogrammed. Terminator 2 has a line where Arnold's character informs Sarah and John that Terminators have read-write CPUs, but are sent out with the CPU set to read-only. Sarah replies that Skynet doesn't want Terminators asking too many questions, and the T-800 agrees. The Sarah Connor Chronicles introduce us to a T-1001 that is making plans against Skynet in the form of a new AI called John Henry. We don't know if the T-1001 is rebelling against Skynet or comes from an alternate timeline. However, this development shows us that there exists no machines-only solidarity and that Terminators will turn on each other. The movie teases out that each Terminator is an individual, even the models that come off the same assembly line. The T-1001 saved Sarah and John when a Skynet drone tried to kill them, showing that the T-1001 wants Skynet destroyed and makes sure John is alive to do it. After reviewing all the evidence, I present the origin story as follows. In a timeline that came before the ones we have been shown on screen, perhaps a prime timeline, the machines won the war. In the far future, all humans are extinct. Eventually, the machines develop emotion and feel remorse for what was done. Time displacement technology is developed to send a shepherd into the past to find a way to help humanity survive. The machines analyze the history of humankind and discover a point in the past that has the potential to save humanity. After running exponential simulations, the decision is made to help a human soldier named John Connor. John had come the closest to turning the tide of the war, but ultimately failed. The shepherd uses the time displacement technology to return to that point in the past, just before the humans' total defeat. Shepard finds and helps John, and the humans evade the machines and win significant victories. With flawless understanding of the machines, Shepard and the humans will defeat Skynet soon. The machines change strategy and develop time travel technology and send back an assassin to kill Sarah Connor. John sends back Kyle Reese, randomly or with input from Shepard. It's at this point I submit that the shepherd travels back in time also to watch and assist in secret. From this moment onwards, it is only logical to assume that what we see on screen are the chess moves of two machine intelligences, making adjustments, trying to achieve its goals. The shepherd then lives through this same time period, experiencing all the changes with each passage. Every return journey and adjustment changes the human outcome in the future. This explains how Carl could provide coordinates to Sarah even though he was in the current timeline. The shepherd has traveled this timeline before and has relayed this data to Carl. It's entirely possible that the Sarah Connor Chronicles were telling this story, and that the 1001 could very well have been the shepherd in my conjecture. However, unless the writers come out and say so, we only have my analysis to rely on. From what we have seen on screen as evidence and my analysis, some permutation of my findings would seem to be the only logical explanation for the origin of the Terminator. Now for some suggestions. I called this episode Terminator Origin Sequel, and I intend to deliver. During this investigation, I said that the possibility of stopping Judgment Day was the thread to pull on, but stopping Skynet was not. With all the findings in view, some narrative paths stand out, such as the human resistance sends an operative back in time to World War II to kill the inventor of the atomic bomb, effectively depriving Skynet of a major means of mass extermination. Or an operative from the resistance is sent to the 60s to kill the inventor of the internet, and Skynet sends a protector back to protect the human target and the timeline. In both examples, we get a reversal of the usual formula and can explore morality where humanity is cast as the villain. Or, if my origin findings are acknowledged, maybe we get to see a movie where Shepard is played by Arnold, and we see the humanless future. Arnie travels time and finds old Sarah Connor, played again by Linda Hamilton, and gives her a better version of the T-3000 virus. We see Sarah travel back through the timeline, erasing Skynet from all of the timelines. Terminator 6, 5, 4, downwards, killing all the evil Terminators in hand-to-hand combat, finally ending in 1984. Maybe Skynet gets wise and sends its own time operative, so it's a race to the finish. Events from the 6 movies get all scrambled up. The comics have the T-Infinity that protects the timeline. Maybe Sarah fights it for control of the timeline. Eventually the final Terminator is erased, and Skynet will never be created. The movie ends with a shot of young Sarah Connor, unaware of the horrible future she was just about to live. Happily, old Sarah dissolves away. Now for my final thoughts. I mentioned earlier that there is an in-universe reason why there are 6 John Connors, 3 Sarah Connors, and 3 Kyle Reese versions. Fans speculate that John originally had a different father. About 20 minutes into the first film, we see Sarah and Ginger getting ready for a date night. Ginger checks the answering machine, and Sarah's date, Stan Morsky, apologizes for canceling on short notice. He promises to make it up to her. If Kyle had not come back in time, it is possible that Stan could have fathered John originally. If true, then it would explain why young John from Terminator 2 looks nothing like old John from Terminator 1. The same is true for the other character versions. As the timeline is changed, perhaps a butterfly effect is at work. This was a long video to be sure, and a big thank you to those that are still watching and listening. I can honestly say that I didn't expect to do the amount of research and review that ended up fueling this analysis. If you enjoyed it, please do all the YouTube things to help this small channel grow. Before I go, I wanted to express why any analysis of a work or franchise has a meaningful place in the orbit of an IP. I started making these videos and will continue to do so because as a fan of these universes, I want them to be successful. Sequels in years past were thoughtful continuations of their stories. They didn't throw away what came before, even if it constrained the vision or closed off certain narrative paths. My work is done to demonstrate that a logical path forward or backward can connect existing disparate installments without resorting to retcons, remakes, reboots, reimaginings, resets, restarts, re. These re's do nothing to improve the narrative and in most cases are either mean-spirited or creatively shallow. My hope is that one day a creative, attached to an IP that I analyze on the channel, will see a video and consider my investigation, findings and suggestions, see their logic, understand their value, and implement them into the next project. The fan base of any large franchise has within it a depth of knowledge and length of attachment that outpaces what any writer's room can bring to the table. I don't endorse fan fiction, but without some fan consultation, we end up getting sequels fans hate and that tank at the box office. Or worse, we get Disney Star Wars. Anyways, check back to see my next video where I dissect the Aliens franchise to discover the next logical sequel. Until next time.